Joining the show now to break this all down is Lauren Seidel-Baker. She is economist at ITR Economics. Great to have you here to kick off the show. All right, top line reaction here to CPI figures. Hey, those core numbers a bit softer than we had been expected. What stood out to you?
A bit softer, but still not at that 2% target that the Federal Reserve is looking for. So this is still relatively persistent inflation as I see it. There are some quirks to the methodology, with October shelter cost essentially being zeroed out that month that the government was shut down, so that data wasn't being collected. So methodologically, that's going to hit through April, and if anything, slightly understate where real inflation is actually. But generally, this is not a big news. I don't think this is going to change expectations of a Fed rate cut. We're still expecting them to hold in January. So really, this is just steady, sticky inflation.
Does this do anything to change the near-term inflation narrative at all, especially for a data-dependent Fed, which I'll ask you more about in just a bit?
Absolutely. I don't think this changes much. Really, as we look at inflation, we're seeing a lot of drivers kind of behind the scenes. We have these factors on the horizon. Rising energy costs, especially electricity. We do see still tight wage pressures. That's going to have some impact in the inflation cycle. And again, those shelter costs, even though the methodology was zeroed out for October, that is something that's relatively persistent. Affordability is not great on the home buying front. So we are still seeing these forces to keep at least a floor under inflation, if not to cause outright rise through later into this year in 2026. So I'm looking for rising inflation, if anything. I think it would be incredibly hard to get us to that 2% target at this point.
The CME Group FedWatch tool gives us 95% odds of no change to the federal funds rate from the Fed for the January meeting, only a 5% chance of a cut. How should the markets be thinking about the Fed's next move from here, Lauren?
So the market's pricing in, I think June is the next expected rate cut. Again, they're going to have their work cut out for them if we do want to see rate cuts. Really, inflation, they have been cutting even before we reached that 2% target. Inflation was moving enough in the right direction that they took those cuts, but we don't want to see inflation get out of control. And on the other hand of their dual mandate, the labor market is still relatively stable. We have limited labor availability, really a tightness there that we haven't seen absent that COVID extreme tightness in quite some time. So I think the Fed is in a tough position. Again, they have both sides of the dual mandate, something in conflict right now. That's before you even talk about this political pressure. We had some news over the weekend of that indictment. We really want to see the Fed maintain independence more than anything else. And I think any rate decisions they're making in the near term come under additional scrutiny because of that political element.
Lauren, how should we think about the current state of labor? Low hire, low fire. Is that still the narrative here in 2026?
Low hire, low fire, really. The method, the metric that I like to look at is the balance between unemployed workers on the one hand and open positions on the other. Right now, that's just about a 1-to-1 ratio. So you have to consider there are certain sectors that are still looking to hire. Last year, it was really healthcare and social assistance that we saw the greatest gains, versus others where you will hear these stories about folks who are out of work remaining out of work longer because there might need to be some reskilling before they can find those permanent positions. So as we look to labor market statistics, I know the unemployment rate is the headline that we all like to watch. We do want to see just when folks don't have jobs, how easy it is to find additional jobs. But that overall balance in the market, it still is somewhat tight today. Keep in mind, we have immigration pulling some negative, putting some negative pressure on labor availability, especially in certain key sectors. So I think overall, it still is a good time to hire if you can find that top talent, but businesses are a little hesitant. A lot of hiring decisions are made with a look to the rear view mirror, not necessarily looking ahead. So we'll still see a lot of the pessimism and uncertainty from 2025 carry into the first half of this year.
Lauren, what does all this mean for consumers here in the first quarter of the new year? How strong would you say the underlying U.S. consumer actually is?
I think our consumer is still doing quite well. First of all, because of that tight labor market, as you said, low hire, low fire, we also don't want to lose the good people we have. So that's keeping upside pressure on wage gains. That means despite this still sticky inflation, our consumer is earning more. And critically, wage gains are still outpacing consumer price inflation. So we're earning more in real dollar terms. Now, that's a little bit skewed to the middle to upper end of the income distribution right now. But statistically, that is the cohort that contributes the most to our retail spending. So I'm not too worried about the consumer, at least not yet.
Lauren Seidel-Baker, economist at ITR Economics. Thanks for being here to kick off the show. It's great to have you.
Thanks so much.